Am I the a-hole for not lying to my son after he was told his mom cheated on me with his stepdad? When my ex, 30 female, was pregnant with our son, 11 male, she cheated and left me for another guy. She even tried to put him on the birth certificate, which led to DNA testing and a 3-year-long custody battle, during which she and her now husband did everything they could to try and take my son from me. Because of the cheating, the attempts to keep me out of my son's life, and the many lies told even to CPS about me, there is no civil or co-parenting relationship between us. We always sit apart at events for our son. We communicate only through a court-assigned app, and third parties handle custody exchanges. That's just the way it has to be. 2 months ago, my ex's mother, who has a rocky relationship with her, told our son that his mom cheated on me with his stepdad. After hearing this, our son brought it up to his mom and stepdad and told them he wished he never had to speak to them again. He said his stepdad is no longer his stepdad. He's completely pulled away from them. My ex mentioned this via the app, and I spoke to our son when he came home to me. We share 50-50 physical custody, 1 week with me, 1 week with her, on rotation. Anyway, I talked to my son, and he told me his mom and stepdad always act like the stepdad is better than me, and that they'd get annoyed he only called me dad and his stepdad by his first name. Finding out about the cheating made everything worse and made him really mad. He said he never liked his stepdad, which I was already somewhat aware of, and now wished he would just go away. He was upset his mom would cheat and then say all this stuff about his stepdad being a good dad to him. I told him I didn't want him to dislike or hate anyone because of me, but I wouldn't force him to like or love someone either. I asked how he'd feel about talking to someone to help process this, and he said he'd be okay with that. So I got him signed up for therapy. He hasn't started yet. My ex later quizzed our son during her week and then got mad at me for not lying to him or denying the cheating. She told me it wasn't fair to use it against her when I wasn't even the one who told him. Her mom did. She said I shouldn't ruin my relationship with my son over her actions. I got one rather long message from her through the app. Then she confronted me outside my house while our son was with her. She told me that a good father would put his son's best interests above his own hurt. I don't think she's right, but I know I may be too close to this to be objective. So, am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. LOL, did she think you were going to take this to your grave? It would have or should come out eventually, perhaps when he was older. But that's not your fault. You sure as heck shouldn't have lied for her once the cat was out of the bag. Not the a-hole. Yes, although I never would have told him myself, but I never intended to lie if someone else did either. Not the a-hole. You are putting your son's best interest first by getting him a therapist that will help him deal with all the crap she, not you, put him through. OP still have time later to verbally drop something like, not my personal problem that putting my son's interests does not benefit you nor a side piece turned husband in any form and way. Not my fault your mom told our son the truth. Direct your BS and anger at her, not at me. Not the a-hole. They both fooled around for like 12 years. They just now legit suffering now forever consequences. Due son finally finding out from maternal grandma the truth about both his parents and his mom's husband. Not the a-hole. It took 11 years, but they finally caught up with the F around. I agree. She would have thought of the consequences of her actions before she did them. Not the a-hole. And the cheating is secondary. She should really quit while she's ahead. Her son doesn't know that she tried to keep his dad out of his life for 3 years. She should take that as a win. Tell him she wishes she exited the relationship with his dad differently and stop bashing someone he loves. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to allow my stepdaughter to use one of my cars and telling her to get a job and buy one instead? My husband and I have a 5-year-old son together, and he has an 18-year-old female daughter, Sally, from his previous marriage. Sally is an entitled, manipulative young lady who has spent her entire life milking the child of divorce card in order to make her parents feel bad and give her everything she wants. As a result, she is now a lazy adult with poor grades in school, no prospect, no job, and no desire to get a job or do something with her life. Although my husband and her bio mom are both responsible for how she turned out, instead of coming together and working toward helping her do something, they prefer to blame each other and do everything they can to undermine the other. For example, if my husband punishes Sally by not giving her spending money, her mom will immediately throw money at her. If her mom takes her car away as a punishment, my husband will immediately give her his car to use. It's a very strange dynamic they have, and very different from what he has with me. When I asked him why he is so different in terms of parenting my son with me versus Sally with her bio mom, he said I am his wife, and a normal, sane woman he can actually communicate with. Whatever. I feel like they are both wrong, but Sally is not my daughter, and I'm happy I don't have to spend too much time with her. Now that summer break has started, Sally has the most important problem in the world. Her car broke down and she needs one to use this summer to go places, meet her friends, go to parties, etc. Her mom is not willing to give her car because she needs it for work. My husband needs his car to go to work, and neither of them is willing to buy her a new one. So Sally, the genius, found the perfect solution and asked me to give her one of my cars. To be clear, I have two cars, a big SUV that was given to me by my employer, and a smaller one that I use when I go into town because it's easier to park. I refused and told her she can't use either of my cars. She insisted and said I don't need two cars at the same time, but she needs one to get around. I told her she's free to use public transportation or get a job and buy one herself. Now Sally's going around to my husband's relatives complaining that I am trying to exploit her and send her to work. I had a good laugh about this with my husband's sister, but my mother-in-law claims I could have just refused instead of telling her to get a job. I'm a little confused about what's so bad about telling an adult to get a job. It's not like I sent a 12-year-old to work for her food or anything. Not the a-hole. Hide your keys. Also, make it clear to all that you will call in the police if a car goes missing, and you will tell them who took it. This OP because from what you've described, Sally wouldn't think twice about borrowing one of your cars. And if the SUV is a nicer vehicle, that is what she'll likely take, especially as her friends will all fit. Make it clear to both her and your husband that if either vehicle is ever missing, you will report it stolen to police and will follow through on pressing charges. If you start getting messages from her family members about how you are trying to manipulate her into getting a job, you need to confirm that as clearly as possible. You are trying to make her get a job and will continue to do so as long as you can. You have the opportunity to erase some of the damage done by her two enabling parents. Do not be deterred. The strange thing is that my husband agrees with me. Her mother totally hates me and is teaching her that everything I say is BS. My husband's sister agrees with me, and my mother-in-law babies her because she is her first grandchild. But I feel like no one in this situation is doing her a favor. I'm not trying to manipulate her, but her situation is so different from what I'm used to or how I parent my own child that it's insane. Like, how can it be so horrible to teach an adult responsibility? To want to give her direction in life? I don't know what they expect to do with her, honestly. They can't support her for the rest of her life, and it's sad because she is a capable, healthy adult. Even people with disabilities work and want to do something with their lives, so she has no excuse. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my mom she chose her husband and stepkids over me, and I won't let her come back from that? I, 21 male, need to provide some background to give everyone a full idea of where I'm coming from. My dad was abusive. He was abusive to my mom mostly, but I didn't escape his anger and violence issues either, especially when it became clear that while I was well-built and tall, I was a big softy and not a fighter. He hated that. He wanted a kid who'd knock out other kids' teeth. That was never me. My mom could never leave him though. It took him dying when I was 10, after a massive heart attack, to end his lifetime of terror over us. Mom and I went to therapy separately and together after Dad died. I confessed that I wished she'd left sooner and that I hated feeling unsafe. I told her I needed her more than I needed anyone else. She told me she would never put anyone else in front of me again and that she'd make sure we had a good life. That only lasted until I was 15. Then she met her husband, Rick, who was a single dad of 3, aged 14, 11, and 9 at the time. Rick's oldest daughter, 14 at the time, had massive behavioral issues. She was in and out of psych holds, and the cops were regulars when she was around. Mom went in with her eyes wide open and decided we all needed to be a family. I spoke out against it, and Mom told me Rick needed her, and so did the kids. I told her I would not stay with her if they all moved in together. I told her I would not live with another abusive person. She told me this was different. The girl was a kid, younger than me, and just needed help. Mom called the cops on me when I left without permission, and the cops tried to bring me back. I was 16 by that point. It escalated and they let me stay. Mom tried to push kidnapping charges on my grandparents for keeping me from her and tried to get the courts involved, but I had seen some stuff from Rick's oldest. The day I left, they were at the house, and Rick's oldest daughter had tried to attack me. So, to make it all stop, I called CPS about the incident, and Mom's attempts to get me back were over. She still tried, but CPS stated I should be where I was safe. Rick's younger kids were removed for a few weeks before being placed back with Rick and my mom, who had moved in together at that point. Mom tried to maintain contact with me and tried to make me give it a chance, but I wanted no part of that. She asked me to spend some time with the younger kids so they could have an older sibling to turn to, but I refused to step up. She showed up at my grandparents a few times, but they sent her away, and I muted her number at that point. She and Rick are still together and now married. I was invited to their wedding but didn't go, and I never reached out. But she's made multiple attempts in the last 2 months, and I ignored most of them. It was only when she told me I had a family I was ignoring, and her, who loved and missed me and never wanted anything to come between us. She said she was sorry. She was so sorry and all that stuff. I told her she chose Rick and his kids over me, and I won't let her come back from that. I said she made me live with abuse once, and she tried to do it again. I told her I didn't care if she wanted to help Rick and protect his younger kids. It wasn't my job to care. It was her job to protect me, and she failed for a second time. After that, Rick reached out to me and told me I didn't need to be so hard on my mom. That his oldest had problems, but it didn't mean he and the kids were undeserving of love and support. He said I had failed at being as good a person as my mom. I blocked him because he's just a random dude who has no business telling me things like that. My mom tried to get in touch again and apologized again, but I ignored it. The fact she's still apologizing is the only reason I'm here to ask this. But am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. She chose your abusive father over you, and herself, frankly, and then she chose an abusive step-sibling over you. She didn't put her own child first, and that has consequences. It might be different if the man she decided to date and live with didn't have a daughter with these kinds of issues, because I'm not saying your mother had to remain alone for the rest of her life. But no, she chose a partner that meant you were exposed to an abusive teenager. It doesn't make any difference that it may not be that kid's fault. You already had trauma from previous violence. It was beyond selfish of your mother to put you in that position again, even if it was from a child this time. I'm glad your grandparents had your back. Don't feel guilty for calling CPS. That is what you needed to do to stay in the safety of your grandparents' home. Thank you. CPS was something that they were really angry at me over, but it was the only way I could save myself. No matter what the consequences were for Rick's kids, I needed to be away from that mess. It's extremely telling that CPS legally removed you from the home, though you had already physically left, and placed you with your grandparents. If there had been nothing behind the call but a teen who just didn't like their new blended family, that would never have happened. CPS does not like to remove children from the home, which is why the younger two left for several weeks, and likely only returned after certain conditions had been met to ensure their safety. Hopefully, someone continued to advocate for them, as well as for the oldest, who sounds like she was not getting the help she needed either. From what I know, nothing changed when the kids were sent back to Rick. They carried on as normal and kept expecting me to come and be their human shield. Last story. Am I the a-hole for asking my daughter to pay for her sister's college costs? I have 2 daughters, 25 and 18. For my oldest daughter, I paid for around half of her total university costs. She took around $30,000 in student loans to pay for the rest. She paid off the loans very aggressively and became debt-free quickly. Due to having to support my parents, we weren't able to save much for our younger daughter and had to use a lot of the money we saved for her in an emergency a year ago. But she still doesn't qualify for financial aid, so she plans to go to community college for the first 2 years, then transfer. We're still not in a great position financially, so what I decided was to ask my oldest daughter. My oldest has a pretty stable job and earns quite a lot in a pretty low cost of living area, so I asked her if she could contribute to some of the funds considering I paid for part of her university, which helped her become debt-free fast. She was originally hesitant at first, but then agreed to cover all the costs for the 2-year community college. This would let me save up to at least pay for some of the fees after she transfers to a state university. I have around $10,000 saved up for her. I hope to bring that number to at least $15,000 to $20,000 so I can pay some of her tuition when she transfers. Now, when my husband found out about this, he got mad and told me it's embarrassing to ask a 25-year-old for money and that we should have either made the youngest take out loans or tried to contribute a bit more. Am I the a-hole? You're the a-hole for not discussing something like this with your spouse. Her daughter is not obligated to pay her younger sister's bills, only if she wants to. This is really embarrassing. Honestly, I was kind of wondering if they were going to approach it as a loan, like that parents would pay back. Nope. Sounds like overall just asked for the money up front. You're the a-hole. Asking your child to support your other child isn't okay. Your 25-year-old has an uphill battle ahead of her, and you're setting her back even more because of your poor planning. Oh, and your oldest became debt-free faster because she paid off her loans. She doesn't owe you anything. You caused this situation for your youngest. You get a loan and maybe take some financial lessons from your eldest. And FYI, asking her for money to support her sister because you spent all of yours on your parents is just forcing your 25-year-old daughter to support her grandparents with extra steps.